Okay, welcome to episode 1 of The Art of Living, where we have candid conversations about how to create a fulfilling life doing what you love. This show is brought to you by Oratory Glory. It's a human development agency and learning collaborative that's dedicated to helping you own your voice and leave your mark. I'm super excited to have my first guest on the show, my friend Ani Sanyal, also known as Buy Up the Block, BKA Ani Hustles. Thank you for joining me today, Ani.
Thank you. I'm honored to be your first guest. I'm a little bit embarrassed. I'm trying to do my best to keep up to the standards that you've set.
I love the modesty. I do, because I know you're out here killing it, and the world knows too. And if they don't know yet, they will soon enough. So, I asked Ani to come on the show. It just worked out serendipitously that he was the first one to sign up. But I've known Ani for maybe 2 years now. I got introduced through our mutual good friends, Mel and Craig. And I remember over lunch, Ani just had this like serious, I don't fuck around kind of vibe to him. And I'm like, this guy is up to some dope things. And since then, we've had the opportunity to work on a project together, the Tell Me About Yourself campaign with We Transfer, We Present. I really love his work ethic. As a person, he's just a sweet, sweet guy. Don't let the serious face fool you. And he's cooking up some amazing things all by his own design. And of course, with the help of God and all the powers that be. But before we dive in, I want to start with your name. And we talked about this before. I think parents sometimes do a really interesting job of naming us, and those names guide our path. But Ani is short for.
Yeah, Ani is short for Aniruddha, which is a Sanskrit name native to my parents in my country of India. And, growing up, that name used to just be my biggest thorn because teachers used to butcher it. Every first day of school, was a struggle. I get the Annie, whatever, and I was just so, embarrassed. And I remember, like, any chance that I had, if I was on the phone ordering food or something, I'd be like, oh, yeah, my name is Mike. Like, I'll pick it up,
Mike?
whatever. Like, it used to be like that, even through high school. And it wasn't until later, probably in my teens, where I really learned what that name meant. And Aniruddha means no obstacles. It means unstoppable. And I think I'm still dealing with that, kind of the weight of that name. Like, I still will think about it sometimes because, my life has been an interesting set of challenges, in a lot of different ways, just as a first generation kid, as a person of color, having, beat kidney failure and having, come out of just financial conditions and to be here today and to sit on that name sometimes is kind of crazy. But yeah, it's very core to me. I think it's something that isn't literally in my DNA, right? And I probably didn't even know it. But I wear it proudly. It's almost like a crest, that I carry, and it's just a reminder sometimes, and it's also like this reminder that there's definitely something bigger than mankind. When these things kind of happen like that, so it's just a reminder for me to be grateful for the challenges that I have been given, which is something we don't always think about, and also just to always have respect for the Creator, you know what I mean, and understand that a lot of things are out of our control, and to always be mindful of that.
For sure. Pronounce it for me one more time.
Aniruddha.
Aniruddha. Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna practice that. I can't. No more Mikes, no more Annies. What's in the name? So I mean, you've been weathering storms. Like you've gone through the trial by fire. So you now run multiple businesses. We don't have to count them out loud. We'll get into that, but it takes a lot of courage to go out on your own. I remember for me, I was probably maybe 19 or 20 when I started to really discover what I was passionate about and what I loved, and that I could make money from it. My oldest niece now, who just turned 22, had a learning disability. And I remember talking to my sister, like I was studying television and radio at the time at Brooklyn College. And I was like, I gotta get into the education space somehow. I knew I loved music. I knew I loved food and culture. And I was like, yo, what can I do? And I started tutoring for this agency. And I was like, oh, I can do this. So I was like, I can tutor on my own. And I put up an ad on Craigslist. And I was like, I know algebra. I could probably teach some English. And within 2 weeks, I had like 8 tutoring clients. So I knew
Wow.
then, I was like, oh, you can make, like, you can create a life for yourself doing what you love. What was the moment for you when you realized, oh, I can make a living off my passions?
Wow, that's a great question. Making a living. I think for me, it wasn't quite fully making a living, but
Mm.
it was understanding how to monetize your art and your passion. I think that to me was a moment where in high school I used to like manage a record label and a group, and also rap and be an artist and executive produce. And I remember we had basically spent our entire junior and senior year working on this album, as if anybody cared. You know what I mean? Like I'd be in a studio, aka my boy's bedroom, until 2 in the morning, like recording raps and doing God knows what. And essentially, we created an entire marketing rollout around this thing, and we sold these CDs for $10 a pop or $7 a pop, whatever. This is 2005, 2006, and I remember we ordered like 300 CDs or something, and I remember selling off like old video games and sneakers and whatever I had to be able to afford that order. And then I remember selling these, and every day at high school, I would just have a backpack and we'd be moving them. And I just remember in like 2 weeks, I had like a couple $1,000 in my pocket.
Wow.
And I remember feeling the knot literally of all the ones and fives, and I was like, this is crazy. Right? And then I remember being like, well, if they bought CDs, I wonder if they would buy t-shirts. And once they bought t-shirts, I was like, I wonder if they'd buy tickets to a show that we did. And it was like this little moment of discovery I had, and I literally never looked back. And that was when I was 17, 18.
Crazy. That like snowball effect. Like they bought into that one piece. So that's 2005, 2006. You run a marketing agency now. That's like 14 years. Like, have you ever thought about that? Like, you have like 14 years in the game?
I turned 30 last year, and that's when I started thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because I used to fear turning 30. For whatever irrational reasons. Like, to me, I was just like, man, if I'm washed at 30, like, what am I going to do? And then I turned 30, and I'm living the life that I've designed, and I have so many different incredible things happening, and I'm like, 30 is amazing. I wonder what 40 is like, right? So it's like I turned 30 and I look back and I was like, I've been doing this for 14 years, and I'm just slowly starting to get good at it.
Yeah.
And it was just like a good reinforcement for the things that I'm working now that are in nascent stages to be mindful about what those look like in 10 years. So like from a real estate side, like have had an extremely challenging, 6 to 8 months dealing with everybody from city inspectors to evicted tenants to raccoons that want to live in my attic. And I'm just like, wow, I'm spent. But I know in 10 years, I'm going to look back and be like, well, happy I started early, and now sitting on X amount of property or whatever. Like, it's just a good reminder, but it takes that long. And it's something I've been trying to stress to people too. Like, a lot of these young kids coming out of college or, they're super excited. I'm like, keep that energy, but keep that energy for 15 years.
For sure. I think that's something we don't talk about too, because a lot of times you get to see the end result, but you didn't see that 10, 15, 20 years that went into not just the work, but literally like honing a skill. Like, I think a lot of people underestimate the value of getting really good at something, right? Whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, I think one of the skills to get really good at is communication. I feel like across the board, that's a skill set that comes into play for you. So when did you why marketing? I feel like you seemed like you were the mastermind in high school, and you're like, okay, we got these CDs. You were working on a year-long rollout strategy. Like, where did the knack for that come from?
That's a really good question. I think for me, I've always had a knack for knowing like what's going to pop or take off before it does. And literally, I don't think I've ever shared this before, but I used to like dub songs off the radio back when I was like 8, 10 years old, like on a boombox. And I mean dub like onto a cassette tape. And like I remember like certain songs would come on like the mix show or something late at night. And I'd be like, no, that's the song that's going to take off. And I would just remember dubbing it. And then 6 months later, it'd be the biggest thing. I'm like, oh my God, like I called that. Not entirely, but to a degree.
You had an inkling,
so that type of recognition for just knowing kind of what's next, and also knowing how like human beings react and function to things. I think it's just like something that's innate in me, and I stopped ignoring it and started paying attention to it.
Yeah.
So I think like, I stopped being like, well, I saw how many times in my life I was seeing things that I identified as potential opportunities take off.
Yeah.
I was like early sneakerhead, so like way before sneaker culture was this, like I was on Nike Talk.
I was about to say, were you Nike talking?
Oh my god, I was way back.
Yeah.
Right. And like sneaker culture is such a thing, right? Because you know what's gonna take off, or you got an idea about what you want to buy two pairs of, and that whole thing, and then discovering artists and being in music. So like those things, I think all just converged in my life. And the toughest thing was like explaining to immigrant parents or family or friends, like, yo, that's a talent, or like that's a thing that I can get paid off, because it's not a hard skill per se.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think over time I just started to like trust myself to be able to earn off that, and then also learned more about how things work culturally and how to manage the technical side of marketing as well as you do on like the anecdotal side, and marrying those two worlds.
Yeah. I want to talk about parents a little bit, because I think my upbringing was a little different. My parents separated when I was super young. My mom worked a lot and was just managing her own demons and addictions and things. So I had free reign to kind of do my own thing. But my parents always taught me, like, you can do whatever you want, like you can do whatever you set your mind to. And I believe that. So what was it like for you navigating those conversations with your parents about like, I think I got something here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have, obviously, everyone says this, but I have, like, to me, the most incredible parent, the most understanding and, like, loving parents of all time. I think that they, given their situation, they always operated from a place of fear, or from a place of, like, safety, right?
Yeah.
And we were raised to be very mindful of those things at all time, right? Always kind of take the safe route, go with what you know, so that you can always provide for yourself. And that was a really, like, when you know that's not who you are in your soul and your being,
yeah,
having to unlearn that is extremely difficult. And so I tell everybody this, and this is what I did with my parents too, is I just show improved. So I never really had too many conversations about these things. Like, we would talk about it, and I would tell them kind of what I'm up to, and they would be as supportive as they felt like they could. But I wasn't too much with the talking. I was like, you know what? Let me go put myself on tour in Japan at the age of 22, and then you guys tell me if you think I'm good at what I'm doing, right?
Or let me go do that.
Let me go ahead and score a Bollywood film, and go to India and show you guys like this music thing is for real. Like, let me run a business, build an agency, and build a real estate business, and then show you guys how you can retire now. Like, it's always been show and prove for me. So
yeah,
I tell everybody that, like, yo, you could talk to your parents. They're gonna be stuck in their ways, and they deserve that, because they've been through a lot to get here.
Yeah.
Show and prove will get you there every time.
Yeah, for sure. I think the 20s are a good decade to do a lot of showing and proving. When I started my first business, I remember being up like my sleep schedule, and we were running an education concert tour. So we would produce
Hall pass tour.
Yeah, hall pass tour. We would produce concerts at low income schools around the country, and it literally started with like me cold calling schools. I found my homie Science, who raps, who I managed at the time. We had a headlining singer, Janelle. And I was like, yo, let's go into schools and put on concerts and get kids excited about leveraging higher learning to pursue their dreams. They were like, bet. Cold called a bunch of schools. They were like, what the hell are you talking about? Then there was that one yes. And they were like, here's $5,000. Go do it. And we made that happen for 3 years, just traveling around the world and figuring out around the country and figuring out the how. So I think that 20s of like really grinding it out. But I was up. My sleep schedule was like, I would go to bed at midnight, wake up at 3, and like work the full day. Like I just had that kind of energy. Wow. But in my like I'm 35 now. I don't have that in me at like now, and I also that's not sustainable, right? So like once you know you can really do the thing, and you get the green light from people whose opinions you really value, meaning like family and close friends. For you, what is the definition of hustle then become?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. Hustle, the word hustle to me it's a dangerous word because if you don't
Hmm.
know what you're hustling for, you might just think being busy and moving around is the wave, and
Yeah.
that's not. So for me, I know that all of my work is driven by purpose, and the purpose of being a, multi hyphen creative that is focused on building generational wealth in minority communities.
Yeah.
That's my purpose, right? So I think all the things that I'm involved in now, whether it's food and beverage, real estate, marketing, media, music, they all map to that same purpose, and all those businesses embody those same pillars, right?
Yeah.
So things like paying it forward, being purposeful, leaving the world a better place than you found it, being kind. Like these are things that are baked into every business, and everyone that is a part of those businesses, they must embody those values to me. Otherwise, like we can't work together.
Yeah.
So hustle to me is I'm definitely, I'm a hustler, like I always been, and I always will be. But it's not a hustle in the sense of like I'm trying to get one over on you, or I'm trying to like just move for no reason. I'm working towards a very specific purpose, which is to build a model that shows people who look like us how to build generational wealth in this country.
Yeah.
We don't turn that equation around. It's gonna be a long, difficult road for us.
For sure, for sure. And it's so fascinating because, right, like by the year 2040, POC, people of color, will be in the majority. So it's like I have this conversation with folks all the time, and they're like, we need more access, access. And I'm sure you would agree that like access is one thing, but without preparation, like we're going to see a lot of people squander some opportunities. So what are the keys for you in terms of like being prepared for what you're up against?
I like that. It's funny because I had a rant the other day, and I don't rant a lot, but I think like, in this new era of social media, everybody is just clamoring to use their identity to create the niche for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a brown carpenter. Like, let me just make like solid jokes about I don't know, you know what I mean? Or I'm a green. I don't like, and I get it. Like, look, when you're trying to come up, you need to create a space and a lane for yourself. Like, you gotta do whatever you gotta do. However, I think the preparation has to be internal first. And like I'll share a story for like the first 12 to 18 months of GRC, I don't think I even like used social media. Like, and I had used it up until then. Like I had done all this, and then I was in this point where there's just no way that I could allow that type of noise into my life. And I just literally like went off the grid. Like I'd post like once every 3 months or something. And I just had to prepare and learn and build my chops and get to the point where I was confident about the work that I was doing and that I would be comfortable in any room. So I think that like knowing when to step out of like the frame and just keeping your mouth shut and just focusing, honing your craft is super important for preparation. I think the second part is like doing like, and this is like a chicken and egg thing, but it's like you got to put yourself in the fire at some point. Like you're not going to close every deal, you're not going to win every client, you're not going to smash every single thing you do. Those things are part of the game, and I think for me, like preparation wise, it was like, am I 80% there? Yes. Let me go out to the fire. I'm gonna gain 2 to 3% off of every experience and get myself up in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I still take that with me to this day. Like real estate is something that nobody will teach you, and there's no way to learn it except to do it. So I could prepare all I want and read all the books I want, but when that thing happens at 2, 3 in the morning, you gotta just know how to be prepared for it.
For sure, and that repetition is so important. I remember when I growing up playing basketball, one of my best coaches, Coach Taylor, always used to tell us repetition is the mother of skill. So we like do it again, run the play again, like whatever it takes. But yeah, you can read about basketball forever, but that doesn't make you a good basketball player. Like,
repetition is a really good one. Yeah, I think
that's
consistency. I would phrase that in my world, but 100%.
Yeah, that's super important. I love that you talk about. We can talk about buying up the block a little bit. My wife and I are in the process, and I talked to you about this, about buying our first home. And I think just we can talk a lot about spatial theory and just the importance of people of color owning space, particularly since we built so much of the spaces in this country. What was the impetus for you to get into real estate, and what's your big picture vision for for all of the blocks that you are buying up?
So it's interesting because for me, I was in this like kind of codependent, caustic friendship business thing with some of these people in my life in this like 4-bedroom apartment in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and like it was this thing where like the energy was so off that like regardless of what we did, we just couldn't get over certain humps. And I remember the first thing I decided that I needed to do was to buy an apartment just to get myself out of that situation.
To buy one.
Yeah, I mean, like I was like, look, if I'm gonna make a move, let me make a move. And I say that to say the apartment that I ended up purchasing and creating that space for myself, that allowed me to do so much. It allowed me to be more productive, to be more grounded, to for my soul and my heart to just be like calm and not coming back to like wild things. And that move allowed me to build all of these businesses that I run today. As weird as that is. So when I realized that impact of space and that in my own life, I looked at what a future in investing in real estate could look like.
Yeah.
And I just realized like if people, when we're young, if we don't start to change the conversation around ownership, it becomes a lot harder to do it later in life. And if we don't create the spaces that we want to be in, it becomes really hard to ever experience those in life.
Yeah.
And so, and then that all of those things motivated by the need that I have to financially take care of my parents. I want them to be able to retire soon, and I want to make sure that they never have to worry, about finances ever again. And so when I was thinking about that, just like running through different scenarios, real estate was a play that I felt like I could feasibly execute to make that happen. And so I started with one condo property and just moved up into buying multifamily residential housing, moved up into buying like multiple plots of land and houses and things on certain blocks in developing areas, and just started to form a thesis around what that looked like for me. And so today we're invested in multifamily residential properties. We're also building co-work spaces within these buildings that we own. We're also looking to introduce like the cafe and all these other things based off the other vertical products that we have in our product pipeline, so to speak.
Yeah.
And again, it's like just because you live in a neighborhood that is not Park Avenue doesn't mean you have to live in a dump, right? Like as a landlord, I can be a mindful landlord that wants to provide the best experience. And that's my small way of making an impact on the things around me. So long-winded answer, but basically creating generational wealth and a vehicle for my family to financially never have to worry again, and another way to extend my footprint across the different brands and things that I own, to be able to create the spaces that we have longed for so long.
For sure. I love that too, that not just like buying up these spaces, but literally building ecosystems for cooperative economics. Like, I'm not just going to have the building. We're going to have a co-working space in the building. We're going to have a cafe in this space. I know you're like buying up a lot of things on the East Coast. My wife and I have actually been looking at farmland in the South. And I think any Black person or person of African descent knows the significance of land in the South. And we've just been like, wow, what if we bought up farmland and started building up spaces where people could come have retreats and eat off the land and like really start to build schools and new systems of communal learning. So we're exploring that down here. And I know you're going to hear from me a lot more about how to build that. I know you.
I mean, that's like you're changing the conversation, right? You're flipping the conversation on its head, and it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a heavy lift, and the day that you finally get to the end of that finish line, you're going to be like, wow. Well, this is done. What's next? And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
You're going to create the next generation of people, and that's huge.
And I know that it's a lifetime of work, right? So I'm like, similar to you, I'm thinking about legacy. Like, what I build, will my children and my grandchildren and their children be able to eat from this fruit? Like, that's the plan. Because I can't take any of it with me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about, you defined hustle. How do you define love?
Wow. Wow. I think for me, love is it's equal parts of like unconditionality,
Mm-hmm.
selflessness, and understanding. I think like when you love somebody, whether it's romantic, or whether it's familial, or whether it's just on a friendship level, like you can't love them the way you want to love them. You have to love them the way they want to be loved, or the way they need to be loved.
Mm.
That's something that I think as a man in my 30s, like that's something that I'm still learning. Because everybody's a little bit selfish, and to do these things that I do now, I have to be very selfish. And a lot of times, I end up loving people the way I want to, and not the way they want to.
Yeah.
So, understanding for me is a big piece of it. Understanding where they're coming from, and understanding how you have to fit into that in a way, even when you don't necessarily want to, or you don't necessarily know how to.
Yeah.
And then unconditionality. I mean, like, I think that's motivated by part faith and just part being the son of immigrant parents and seeing what they've been through. Like they set a very high standard. You know what I mean? Of what is love unconditionally, and I think that challenge is on our on us now to embody that. And the last thing, selflessness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I touched on that.
Yes.
It's easy to be selfish. It's a lot harder to be selfless, and so I try to do. For me, it's like I'm a very macro person. So when I love somebody, I'm like, all right, cool. Like you're cool in my book. Like I'm rolling with you for the next 30, 40 years. And then I kind of ignore the micro. So I'm trying to get better at taking those feelings and that affection that I have in the macro and kind of synthesizing it in micro moments so that people are always reminded that, how I feel about them.
Yeah. The micro is super important. It's almost like, if you equate love to the way you love your business, because we talk about our businesses as labors of love, but the detail and the care and the like being malleable and like, oh shit, we tried this 7 different ways and it didn't work. I got to be flexible. Like I wish that we could apply, or those of us who are workaholics or recovering workaholics can learn to practice the same love for our labor that we do for the people around us. But talk about hustle and love. So what does a fulfilling life mean to you?
Wow. For me, fulfillment is directly tied to freedom. Freedom of time, freedom of energy, and freedom financially. And so
time, energy, financial.
Yeah. So if I'm able to live life, quote unquote, on my time and my schedule, that's extremely fulfilling. And even though the actual micro work, like when I'm in the field or I'm in the trenches of those times, like it can be exhausting and you get battered down. For me, I never get dragged in that moment because I'm like, I'm good. Like, yeah, I had to deal with something today, but I created that for myself because I want to get to this next phase. And so freedom and is really closely tied to fulfillment. I think bringing people up with you is extremely fulfilling to me, and that's something that I realized. It's like doing it alone is cool, but it's better when you're with a team, and that takes a lot of selflessness and courage as well to make sure that other people get fed before you do.
Yeah.
But I think that's just part of the way I see fulfillment, and I think there's an element of like discovery in all of this too, and being able to discover new things and discover the things that you just never thought you would do by having a life that is free and having time. So like, everyone wants to say, well, I just want to read books and travel. Like, sure. It's like, there's a certain element of that where it's like, if you're free to do what you want, those things are just part of your existence, right? And then that fulfillment that comes from learning and discovering just gets tied up in all that. So, yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. And I tell people, and you can ask all my staff, like, no one's ever heard me complain. Like, I've never been like, yeah, this is not, I'll never complain because every day I wake up and it's up to me to chart my course, so.
For sure.
That's what.
Freedom, family, discovery. I really like those. That the ingredients for a fulfilled life. You have a busy life. There's GRC, there's Idea Exchange, there's Calcutta Chai, there's Sanyal Capital Group, and you manage an artist who is
Yeah.
also a friend. Like you work closely with friends. I'm curious to know, like in balancing all the moving parts, how have you been able to create or learn to create harmony for yourself within all of the hyphens?
Yeah, I think I haven't created full harmony yet. I
Mm,
think that's something I'm in the process of. I think I've made improvements, I've made strides, I've made
yeah.
progress, but finding that harmony is something I think is going to be almost like a lifelong journey. I think as long as you're creating and trying to break barriers and break walls down, you're always going to kind of be in and out of harmony, so to speak. It's
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
fluid thing. But I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with purpose. When those are all governed by the same purpose, it's like people know like don't work with him unless you're committed because
We
I
know.
only, I only
We
have one
know.
speed, and I'm only looking for people that are long term focused and have that patience and that understanding that if we're gonna get into this, we're gonna be committed and we're gonna ride out and it's gonna be up and down, but we're gonna help each other get there. So all those businesses and all those endeavors are all governed by that same sense of building something that outlasts us and can then pay it forward for people that look and sound and feel like us. But that harmony, perfect harmony, doesn't really exist yet. I
No.
think every day is new to me, which is exciting, but also very challenging. And I've been looking for ways that I can do better to recharge and kind of like make sure I reset before I go out on that next day. Because sometimes I'll wake up on Monday and then I go to sleep on Friday. I'm like, I don't
Where
know
did
what
it go?
happened.
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah.
And even we might have taken a bunch of wins and moved a bunch of mountains, but it's just sometimes it moves so fast. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm able to smell the roses while I'm walking through the bushes.
For sure, for sure. I was in a prayer ceremony like last year, and it was in that experience that I started substituting out the word balance for harmony, right? Because when we think balance, we're like 50-50. But I think in hearing you say that, like the practice of harmony is really like, you just got to take things as they come. Some days it's going to be messy. Like some days you're going to be like, nobody is having a Jordan day every day. But I mean, even Jordan was playing with the flu. So some days you're going to feel like shit. You take it all as it comes. And I know both of us have like kind of crazy, I won't say crazy because I'm grateful for my schedule, but some days you're in one time, you can be in four time zones in a given week. So with no one day being the same for you, in the spirit of harmony, what are some of your rituals and things that keep you at your best, or at least keep you sane in the midst of what can feel like chaos?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I keep it pretty simple, believe it or
Mm,
not. Like I'm not one of those like life hacking cats who's just always looking for the next thing. Like I don't have too many bells and whistles. I really try to wake up every day at the same time.
mm-hmm.
So not super early, nothing crazy. I wake up at 8 o'clock every day, regardless of when I went to sleep, and I'll always start my day with prayer and
Mm,
just kind of like a shower and prayer kind of together if time doesn't permit, and that's just a moment for me to like ground myself. And I'll always kind of pray for similar things where I'll pray for God to grant me the courage, like the charisma and the confidence to get through whatever these things I have to get through today, and just to remind myself like you already got it, but
yeah.
in case you didn't, like someone got your back. And then the second thing is I'm just really mindful of the content that I consume. So despite working in a bunch of digital, industries and things like that, I don't spend my time doing any kind of like BS Instagram scrolling or consuming media that could be harmful. I don't have
Yeah.
own a TV, so I don't watch the news. Like I don't allow anything to get in my cipher that's not edifying, and I think that's really important. And a lot of times, like, have I watched this new show or that new? No, I haven't watched anything because I'm mindful about what I'm letting kind of in my filter.
Yeah.
So that's there. I'm really big on like reading the New Yorker, which is like my way of like getting a 360 on like art, culture, politics, all at the same time.
It's so
But
beautifully
that's
designed too, the New Yorker.
yeah, it takes up so much time. It's like a job in its own. But and I gauge my life by how far behind I am on my New Yorker issues. So right now I'm about like 6 weeks behind, which is like definitely a struggle.
Mm,
And then trying to think in terms of rituals. Definitely like just calming the mind down before you go to sleep is important. Like, I
yeah.
don't try to try to wrap up all kind of crazy phone calls and things and just give myself a chance to breathe. And then when weather permits, kind of where I am, I like to get active.
Yeah.
Shoot some hoops, play some golf, run around, like just let it off a little bit because I think that as you get older, it becomes harder and harder to find that time.
Golfing, Ani. I've seen some of your golf IG stories. I'm like, okay, Ani, I see you. I've heard great things about golf.
All I'll say about golf is I never thought I'd be playing golf. I used to clown it for my entire life. However, mentally, it is such a challenge that I cannot let it defeat me. So
The
that's
competitor in you. Okay, got it. The Ani hustles in you is like, yeah.
Golf to me is ready to go.
If you were to describe all of your businesses in one sentence each, how would you describe them?
All of my businesses. Okay, give me 5 seconds.
Yeah. And you can take one business at a time. I know they all do different things, so.
No, but I mean, let me see. I'm challenged to stay on the question.
There you go with the competitive.
All of my businesses, they live at the intersection of culture and commerce, and they are all driven by the purpose of creating sustainable solutions at the intersection of culture and commerce. So if we're talking about food and beverage, with our chai company, it's like how do we create a place for the food to be amazing and a place for the stories to be amazing. If we're thinking about digital, how do we create a marketing agency where it's equal parts technical, paid media, and media buying, and narrative and storytelling and like discovery by organic means. If we're talking about an artist, how do we create a music and a brand that is forward looking, but also mindful of where they come from and the context. So all those things kind of are governed by those same principles.
Dope. Look at that. Dang. It's good. See, Ani, you good. You good with the hot seat, man. Look ahead. Got it. This guy, man, with the air hoops. We got to get some kind of game going. I have 2 final questions for you. The first is, what are 3 things that you couldn't imagine living without?
Wow. Are we talking physical things?
Your choice.
3 things. 3 things I couldn't think about living without. Faith. My phone. and shelter. Yeah, I'll have certain days where I'm like out for 19, 20 hours of that day, and I'll come home and I'll just feel like I'm so lucky to have a roof. You know what I mean? Like to me, like that's one of like the greatest things on earth. So like, yeah, if I got a place to like trap out of, and I got a phone, I got my
place to live out of, a phone to trap off of.
Yeah, and faith to believe in. I think I can figure it out.
Yeah. See, that makes me think of a bonus question. How do you define faith?
It's a great question. I think faith is it's a belief in something that is far greater than you can comprehend or understand. Something that is immutable, like doesn't change despite your circumstances, and something that forces you to surrender your ego and surrender, what you think you know. And I think those things are kind of like the building blocks for faith.
For sure. I love that. I'm actively practicing strengthening my faith too, and I think it's the ultimate test in being courageous enough to serve something bigger than you, and know that you don't know shit. You don't know all the answers, and you really, in the end of it, you don't know shit.
And ultimately, everything you do is just a vehicle for for something bigger than yourself. You know,
Mm.
you're a reflection of that at all times, and that's something that I carry, super close to me. It's like if I'm going to step out of the house, I need to be the best reflection of you know something bigger than myself, of
Yeah.
God, whatever that is. And if I'm not doing that, then that's a L.
For sure. So, final question before we wrap. What advice would you give to the multi-hyphenate creatives and entrepreneurs and consultants out there who are trying to build a fulfilling life for themselves?
It's a great question. I'm gonna try to give a little different piece of advice
Yeah.
than I usually give. I usually go with don't let people who aren't qualified to give you advice give you advice.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna switch it up on this one. I think I want to go with start with something that you're really good at. You have a bunch of ideas, you have a bunch of things going on. Start with your strengths, play to your strengths, and then create products from your byproducts. So start with that one business or that one idea, and as that starts to create byproducts, you can turn those into different things. But hone in first, because otherwise you're going to live a scattered life of being a jack of all trades and not really mastering anything.
For sure. I love that. Start with your strengths. Build an umbrella around your strengths. I love that.
Yeah.
Ani, thank you so much for being the first guest on the show. I have so much love for you. I'm so grateful we got to chop it up. For those of you who want to learn more about Ani, I'm dropping all of his links in the description field right there so he doesn't have to share his IG and his Twitter and all of the things with y'all. But The Art of Living will be back again on April 10th with our next guest, brought to you by Oratory Glory, of course. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.